We're having a special edition mailbag episode where I answer all of your guys' questions, and we got a ton of questions centering around one topic, which we'll open up with Jerami Grant to the Portland Trailblazers. Talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already and you're one of the 51% of people who watch us on YouTube and have not hit the subscribe button, make sure you go to our YouTube at Locked On Pistons. Hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Best way to support the podcast on the road to 2,000 subscribers and continuing to show Locked On that we're the fastest and best growing fan base at the Locked On Network. So again, if you haven't already, head over to the Locked On Pistons YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And today's episode, like I told you guys already, we're going to be answering all the questions you guys sent in to have answered. Now, we were going to do this last week, but we did not get a lot of questions, enough questions to fill a podcast. So we just went a different route last week. So I came back this week. You guys sent in a ton, got a lot of responses here. And a lot of your guys' questions, there was about, I think, like 5 to 7 of these questions were centered around Jerami Grant and his possible trade in the offseason to the Portland Trailblazers. And the reason why this has become a topic, I mean, this was a topic at the trade deadline. We talked about this a lot heading into the trade deadline. I told you guys I thought he was going to be traded to the Trailblazers like a few days before the deadline. It started to heat up a little bit at the deadline. And the reason why it's starting to heat up again right now is because Shams at The Athletic, you guys, everyone know who Shams is, the big guy who rivals Woj, like the big reporter or whatever. He put out an article, and it was basically like an update article where certain teams are, rumors-wise, heading to the offseason, like updates, whatever. And the Pistons had an update, and it was about Jerami Grant. And it said that the Portland Trailblazers are going to be heavy suitors for Jerami Grant in the offseason. They're going to try to pursue him with everything they have, and that they're going to dangle the Pelicans pick that is protected right now in this upcoming draft, 5 to 14. So now that has caused a lot of Pistons fans, and reasonably so, to wonder, should the Pistons do this trade? Will the Pistons trade him to the Portland Trailblazers? What will the Portland Trailblazers give up? What will the trade look like? Does Jerami Grant's recent play with the Pistons make it to where the Pistons may reject this kind of trade? Does overall the Jerami Grant trade saga, it was quiet down for a little bit. It got really heated up at the trade deadline, but it started to quiet down a little bit, and now it's right back to going. So we're going to attack all sides here because you guys asked a bunch of different questions from different angles. We'll just cover the whole thing here. So one, do I think the Pistons are going to trade Jerami Grant to the Portland Trailblazers? Yes, I think Jerami Grant will be a Portland Trailblazer like within the first month of the offseason. I'm not going to lie. As soon as the lottery happens and the Pistons know that what exact pick the Pelicans pick will land at, because I highly doubt the Pelicans will make the top 8. If they do make the top 8 in the playoffs, then we're looking at a different story, because then it's not going to be heading over to Portland. It's protected at that point. So you're hoping that the Pelicans lose. If the Pelicans do lose and the pick falls in between there, I do believe the Trailblazers are going to offer that pick with some other things, and they're going to get Jerami Grant. Why? Jerami Grant and Damian Lillard apparently are close friends. They played on the Olympic team this past summer. They were really close. Dame and I believe it was Kevin Durant that were two of the guys who really pushed for Greg Popovich to get Jerami Grant when they had a bunch of guys missing because of COVID and finals backing out, like all that stuff. They pushed hard for Jerami Grant. And Jerami Grant and Damian Lillard apparently have a really good relationship. The Portland Trailblazers are trying to keep Dame happy. They're trying to make him happy going into the next season. They create a ton of cap space moving into this summer. They created a bunch of flexibility for themselves heading into the summer. They traded away CJ McCollum. They're basically doing a big retool to retool completely around Damian Lillard and give him a competing, contending team. And one of the first things they're going to do is going to get one of his buddies that can contribute to that, someone that will keep him happy or make him happy if they get him in Jerami Grant. So I do believe the Portland Trailblazers are going to try their hardest to get Jerami. I do believe the Pistons are probably going to trade Jerami to the Portland Trailblazers when the offseason begins and when they know where that pick is going to be at. Another question, one of the questions I saw, and I think like 2 of you guys asked this one, isn't this the same trade offer that the Pistons got at the trade deadline? Yes, this is going to be, if it is going to be the Pelicans pick, and now things could change in the offseason. They could offer more because Jerami has played a little bit better since the trade deadline. I mean, who knows? The Pistons could get more trade value for him. I've said that I don't think they're going to get more, but if they do, it could be like the Pelicans pick, maybe a future pick as well, and then a young player that they have. It could be less. It could just be the first round pick and something, a salary filler along those lines. Who knows? But this along the Pelicans pick being the main package, that was the same offer that was supposed to, or not supposed, but that was offered to the Pistons at the deadline. The difference is the Pistons don't know where that pick's going to land at the deadline. In the offseason, they're going to have a better idea of it. I guess that was their reasoning. For me, that wouldn't have been enough for me to pass up on it. But either way, I guess if the Pistons know that the Trailblazers are going to offer this exact same deal in the offseason because they really want to keep Dame happy, then I guess whatever. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, they can try to squeeze a little bit more out of them. And another part of this, a lot of you guys asked, what will a package potentially look like? So, like we've been talking about, the first round pick from the Pelicans that they traded to the Portland Trailblazers, that will be the key part of this trade. Another thing that I really want you guys to stay looking out for is that they got a $20 million trade exception in the CJ McCollum trade. Now, that trade exception expires, my voice is correct, February 8th of 2023. That $20 million trade exception basically fits the exact amount of Jerami Grant's deal next year. Now, if he gets traded to the Trailblazers, he's probably going to sign that 4-year, $112 million extension. But for next year's, for just the 2022-2023 season cap sheet, that trade exception should fit exactly Jerami Grant's salary for the Portland Trailblazers. So I think that's something that could possibly happen. The first round pick, and then they trade the trade exception to the Detroit Pistons, which could be useful for them. Outside of that, I don't think they really have anything else too interesting for them. I mean, I've heard some people talk about Nasir Little, maybe Keon Johnson, but these guys are like low level prospects that aren't really like moving the needle or anything. It's basically that pick. The Pistons are going to want that pick to fall somewhere in the top 10. And in that The Athletic report, they mentioned that if that pick does not convey to the Portland Trailblazers, or if it ends like 10-14, the Trailblazers are going to have to up their offer because other teams are still interested in Jerami, and they're going to go after Jerami, and they're going to have better offers. So, I mean, we said at the trade deadline, we thought there were going to be a bidding war. I think there was a bidding war at the deadline. The Pistons just didn't bite on anything. Hopefully, there's another bidding war that happens in the offseason. That would be great for the Pistons. I don't know if it's going to happen because I don't know if Jerami's going to be the biggest commodity out there at that point. He could be. We'll see what happens. But if I had to put my money on, I do believe the Trailblazers are going to get him because they feel like the most desperate team to get him. They want to keep Dame happy. They have that first round pick in this upcoming draft. The Pistons could potentially have 2 lottery picks in this draft. Troy Weaver loves having multiple picks to be able to move up, move down at any point, wherever, have that flexibility. So I think the desperation of the Portland Trailblazers makes it incredibly likely, along with the fact they have that first round pick, that Jerami will be a Trailblazers at some point in this offseason. But that's where I'm at with Jerami Grant and the Trailblazers. And also, I would be dumb not to mention the fact that after the Pistons played the Trailblazers and lost to them this past week, Yusuf Nurkic and Josh Hart tweeted out the exact same picture of them two hanging out with right after the game, going up to Jerami Grant and talking with him after the game. Very obvious tampering. I don't know how they didn't get fined. I love it. I think it's funny. I absolutely love that kind of stuff. I think it's great for the league. It's a great storyline. I love the fact that these athletes are so like active on social media and share those kind of things and give you guys those like cryptic messages. I think it's fun as hell. But I don't know how they didn't get fined for tampering though, because it's very clearly what they're signaling for. But that's my whole thought process about Jerami Grant, the Portland Trailblazers. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kookie Hill. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts about, do you think that he should go to Portland? The Pistons should pull a trade with Portland? Do you think there's another team out there that you'd rather see the Pistons try to work with and possibly get more assets from? I'd love to hear what you guys think about that. But when we come back, we'll answer all the other questions you guys have. And trust me, we had a lot more than just the Jerami Grant news. We'll answer all of the questions you guys sent in when we come back. But first, I had to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, PrizePicks. All right, NBA fans, are you looking for daily fantasy options for the NBA? They need to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love this, and I know you will too. It's so easy to use. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under in their projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's really just that easy. PrizePicks is also safe and offers incredibly fast withdrawals. Use their award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. It offers any prop you can think of, from point scores to rebounds and even steals. And guess what? PrizePicks allows mixed sports entries. So, for example, when the football season was going on, almost every week you had me going on there, and I was taking the under in Jared Goff's passing yards and the over on Cade Cunningham's points. Now, rarely did those two things match up. I lost a lot, but you can do things like that. You can bet football and basketball, college football, MLB, soccer, MLB. You can combine all kinds of things here. It's incredibly fun to use. You guys need to go check it out. And for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a singular point, but you must use code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use code NBA for $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. If you pick a PrizePicks entry and he doesn't score a single point, you got to be the most unluckiest person of all time. But just make sure you guys go check that out. Make sure you take advantage of that opportunity. Go to PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Closing in on 2,000 subscribers. Continuing to show Locked On. We are the best and fastest growing network or fan base at the Locked On Network. So I'd really appreciate if you guys headed over to the Locked On Pistons YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. Again, I would really appreciate it. But let's go ahead and head to the YouTube channel and answer the questions you guys submitted underneath the YouTube videos. I feel like on the last mailbag, we answered a little bit more questions from Twitter than we did YouTube. So let's go ahead and show YouTube some love here. And also, if you guys aren't on YouTube, you guys aren't watching on YouTube, and you guys also don't have a Twitter, and you guys just listen to the podcast version, you're like, how can I get on the Mailbag podcast? Go in the reviews down below if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. Type a 5-star review and type in hashtag mailbag and leave your question down there. I'll be sure to answer them. That's just for those of you who don't have either of those platforms. They're just listening on the podcast version. That's the way that you guys can find yourselves on the Mailbag episodes when we do them. But anyways, let's get into some of these questions. So this one is from Gabe Clean. He says, do you think Miles Bridges is a good target in free agency for this offseason? What is the max amount you would pay him? So I really like Miles Bridges. I'm a real big fan of his. I think he probably is going to get overpaid this offseason by whatever team gets him, whether it's the Detroit Pistons, whether it's even the Charlotte Hornets. I think he's going to get overpaid because he might get the max, and he's just not a max player. However, he's a damn good player. Like, I'm looking at his synergy chart right now, and if you guys have synergy, I know probably a lot of you guys probably don't. I'll tweet this out. I'll tweet it out underneath the YouTube or underneath the when I post the episode. I'll tweet his synergy chart out. I also put a link to that in the comment section or in the info below in the YouTube channel, so you guys can look at it while you're listening. But let me just read you his synergy chart real quick from this year. Spot up numbers, he's rating as good in the 52nd percentile. Transition, 62nd percentile, rating is good. Pick and roll ball handler, 91st percentile, excellent. Isolation, 78th percentile, very good. Pick and roll man, very good, 69th percentile. Handoff, 70th percentile, very good. Cut, 96th percentile, excellent. Offensive rebounds, 89th percentile, excellent. Miscellaneous scoring, 74th percentile, very good. Jump shots, 51st percentile, good. Around the basket finishing, non-post-ups, 77th percentile, very good. Catch and shooting, good, 52nd percentile. Like this dude is just, and jump shots off the dribble, 51st percentile, rating is good. Like, he's having a tremendous season, and he quite literally, I know a lot of people who don't maybe watch the Charlotte Hornets or know much about Miles Bridges just assume that he's this guy who just jumps really high and has a lot of cool dunks. And while he certainly can jump real high and he will have a ton of highlight dunks every single game, he is literally he can do everything on the offensive end of the floor. You want him to score in isolation? He's gotten better at that. You want him to score in a pick and roll ball handler? He can do that. You want him to score in transition? He sure as hell can do that. He's gotten better as a shooter, as a catch and shooter. You want him to isolate and try to get his own bucket? He'll do that. You want him to cut off ball and play off ball? He can do that because he can catch lobs and he's really good at finishing around the rim. Like, there's nothing that this dude cannot. You want him to be active on the boards and get put back dunks and put back layups? He can do that too. Like, there's literally not a damn thing on offense that he really struggles at. Now, his 3-point percentage came down a little bit from where it was at the beginning of the season, but as far as catch and shooting, he's a pretty good catch and shooter. He's not a liability offensive. He's actually like incredibly good offensive player. So I would be really interested in him if the Pistons were able to get him. As much when it comes to how much I would pay him. Oh God. I've told you guys this before. The salary cap now in the NBA is just so confusing. You never know. Like a bad contract one season, like the following year, all of a sudden it's not that bad of a contract because the salary cap will go up. Guys will get overpaid. A new guy will get overpaid. And all of a sudden that new guy who got overpaid doesn't look so overpaid a year later. Like the NBA salary cap is just so wonky and crazy nowadays that even I don't even know what a bad contract is. Like what's an accurate contract. But from my point of view, I would probably, the most I would go would be like 25 million. 25 million would probably be the most I'd go. And I think 25 million probably would be overpaying him at that point. I know Jerami Grant's getting paid 20 million right now. I would say that if Jeremy's making 20, I'd probably say Miles Bridges should get 23, 22, 23. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who probably aren't even 100% sure that Jerami Grant or that Miles Bridges is better than Jerami Grant. But I just think that in this, when you're going to the free agency with how he's played, you're probably going to get more than Jerami Grant did. So I'd say that his accurate, how much he should get paid, like 21 to 23 million. The most I'd go is 25 million. If you could get him below that, you're getting an absolute bargain. I highly doubt any team's going to be able to get that because he is a restricted free agent. Charlotte's going to have to match anything that if they want to keep him. And the only way that a team will possibly be able to get him out from Charlotte is if they do overpay him. So, but that's the kind of thing you deal with when you're in Detroit specifically, though. You're not going to get free agents just because they want to choose your culture or your city over everybody. That's just not. It just doesn't happen. It hasn't happened in the Pistons' history. It hasn't happened. That's just kind of one of those things you have to just understand that if you want to get a good to great free agent, you're going to have to pay more than other teams to get them to want to come to your team. So we'll see what happens. I like Miles Bridges. If they got Miles Bridges, I'd be really happy about it. Next question is from Maria. It says, do you think the Pistons will win a championship again? I hope so. Yeah. I mean, if you mean like ever, yeah, they'll eventually win again at some point. I don't know in my lifetime, but it'll happen again at some point. And then you go on to say, also, what do you think Cade and Grant's long-term position will be? I think Cade's long-term position will be as a combo guard, and Grant's will be somewhere else on a different team. And then your final question is, if the Pistons get the number one pick, should they keep it or trade it? Obviously, I think they should keep it and just take the best prospect they believe it is. We're going to have a lot more draft coverage coming for you guys over the next few weeks, obviously heading into the offseason leading up to the draft lottery. And I think it's going to heat up even more after the draft lottery. Once you know where the Pistons are selecting, we can really start diving into it even more. But even before then, we're going to start getting into it a lot more. So stay tuned for that. Next question is from Elijah. It says, now that the Pistons have plenty of bigs, Bagley, Stu, Luka Garza, Kelly-O, and have shown interest in Mitchell Robinson, should they draft a big man and go for a score first kind of wing? The Pistons are at a spot right now where I've said, and I said this on the last episode with Locked On NBA or Locked On Draft expert Richard Stayman. The Pistons are in a position where they should just take best player available. Now, obviously, you should consider a little bit like fit, I guess, but they just need talent. They still just need high-level talent. So whether that's a big, whether that's a wing, whether that's a point guard, whether the dude's 5'7", the best talent, whether the dude's 7'8", and the best talent. They just need to get the best player available wherever they're drafting at. I don't care what their position is. The Pistons, that's what they need. They desperately just need high-level talent. They got a good pick in Saddiq. They got a good pick in Cade, obviously. And outside of that, they have like decent to okay pieces. Like nothing crazy on their team. So they still just need a lot of talent for the squad. So again, it doesn't matter what position. They just need to draft best talent available. Again, whether that's big, small, wing, whatever. So next question is from Devontae Hunt. He says, what meaningful free agent do you think we should sign in the offseason this year that help us most compete for a playoff spot next year? I think it's Miles Bridges. I think Miles Bridges is the high-level free agent that you should go after. Outside that, there's DeAndre Ayton too. I've said in the podcast before, if they got DeAndre Ayton, I'd be absolutely ecstatic. He's a tremendous player, great player, and he would definitely raise this team's ceiling, 100%. But if you have to pick a position on the basketball court that you are okay spending less at and think you could get the same or equal value, somewhat of value from while spending less at, I think it's the center position. You can go get a guy like Mitchell Robinson, like a Nerlens Noel, someone who can play defense, not going to ask for many touches, set good screens, and be a lob threat, that kind of thing. You can get that for cheaper. So, again, if they did get DeAndre Ayton in this offseason, I would be ecstatic. But I'd rather, if you had to make me pick a position, center would be the position I spend the least on. So I would rather go after Miles Bridges. But again, I just want to make sure I emphasize, if they got either of those guys, I would be very happy. I would be extremely happy. And let's answer one more question. before we move on to the ad break. It says, this one's from Greg C. Is Saddiq Bey, even though he's a flex player, proving that he should be our starting shooting guard, his natural position? No, he's not a shooting guard. There's another person who asked this as well. I think I got like 3 questions about this one. Saddiq Bey he can't. I guess you could try to play him as shooting guard in like spurts and like certain lineups if you want to go super wonky. But Saddiq Bey is a 3-4, 4-3. He is not a 2-3-3-2. He can't guard guys at the 2. He's not fast enough to you could say that he could outpower guys on the offensive end at the 2, but he's just not really being utilized to his best ability unless he's at the 3 or 4, especially defensively. It just doesn't make much sense. Again, his natural position, I honestly think that his best position might be at the 4 because of how strong he is and how good he rebounds, depending on the wing that's next to him. Like Jerami, Saddiq's like a better 4 than Jerami because Jerami just sucks on the boards. He doesn't crash the glass at all. He can't grab any rebounds. So, like, next to Jerami, he's actually a decent fit at the 4 because he takes up that lack of rebounding from Jerami, and he's much more physical than Jerami is. So, it just depends, like, which wing you have next to him. I honestly think that he might be better at the 4. I'm willing to, like, wait and see how that plays out. But maybe if he has, like, a different guy next to him, maybe if the Pistons draft a big guy better than at rebounding and better interior than Jerami, all of a sudden Saddiq looks better at the 3 than he does at 4. But I actually do think that, like, at a lot of points this season, he's looked better at the 4. But when we come back, we'll answer the rest of you guys' questions. I believe we have I think we have like 6 or 7 more to go. We'll try to get all those done in the final segment. If I do not get you guys' question, if there's someone that I didn't answer, just tweet it at me, comment down below. Let me know I didn't get you guys a question. I'll be sure to answer it on next week's episode. But first, let me tell you guys about one of our sponsors, your guys' favorite sponsor, Built Bar. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right, and it's thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not even really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs bar? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting protein bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're an absolute treat. And guess what? They are covered in 100% real chocolate. And it's not just the Puffs bar. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, that's 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They taste better and they're better for you. A typical candy bar can be anywhere between 200 and 300 calories. Usually has like 30 grams of sugar and dozens of net carbs. If you go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart, you'll be absolutely blown away with Built Bar. High protein, low calories. High fiber, low carbs. It's usually around 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Incredibly healthy for you. And they have all kinds of flavors too. From mint brownie, coconut almond, new flavor, white chocolate cookies and cream. You guys know my favorite is peanut butter brownie. You know, you got cherry barcia, you got strawberry, you got raspberry, you got all kinds of different flavors. And they're constantly coming out with limited time flavors. So make sure you're going to Built.com and checking that out whenever you can. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every single time. And they've actually made it a lot better for me. I feel a lot better. I've been going to the gym more consistently, and every time I've went to hoop over the last few weeks, I really feel a lot more healthy and a lot more springier. And a lot has to do with, I'm going to the gym, but I'm also having Built Bars and replacing like regular treats that aren't good for me with Built Bars. And I feel like I'm feeling a lot more healthier. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to our Locked On Pistons YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. Best way to support the podcast on the road to 2,000 subscribers. Again, continuing to show Locked On will be the fastest and best growing fan base at the Locked On Network. So again, go to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. But let's go ahead and try to do rapid fire or go a little bit quicker than I did the first 2 segments to get through all of you guys' questions. So let's get it going. Next question. Saddiq Bey, Miles Bridges, or both? This question is asked by Xavier. I mean, both. Why should you have to pick between one of the two? They shouldn't have to pick between one of the two. Saddiq's under contract. Miles Bridges is going to be a free agent. You can have both. You shouldn't have to pick between the two. Next one. This one's from Overthinker on Twitter. He says, I love these podcasts, so I'm going to submit a couple. Hey, thank you. Thank you for listening. I'm glad to hear that you love it. You think a lineup of Cade, Livers, Bey, Grant, and Stu would work? I actually do think that lineup would work. I really like a lineup. I tweeted this out the other day. I think a lineup of Cade, Killian, Livers, Bey, and Stewart. I would love that lineup because there's going to be a bunch of guys being able to move the ball, find the open guy, adequate enough spacing. switchability across everywhere on defense. I really would love to see that lineup. But also, this lineup you submit, this one would work as well. With Cade and Livers, I think you got enough guys who will move the ball and find the open guy, or maybe not enough guys, but you have a decent amount of it. You also have really good spacing with Cade, Livers, Bey, and Grant. And obviously, you need that defensive interior with Stu. At certain times, you probably would want to go with Bagley, depending on what the matchup is and how the game is going. If you need more offense and more of that threat inside scoring, you'd probably go with Bagley. If you need more defense, obviously you go with Stu. But that lineup, I like it. I think you probably will see it at some point. Next question. You said you had another one. Let me get your next one. And yeah, right here. He says, Killian scoring issue. Do you think it's a coaching issue or a Killian issue? 100% Killian issue. Actually, let me go 90% Killian issue, 10% coaching issue. I've said this before in the podcast many times. Killian needs to get better. That's all on him. He has to get better at scoring. A lot of this is just him. Like, he's not a very good scorer right now. It is what it is. However, I've always been a proponent of, I've always believed that coaches are supposed to put guys in the best position to succeed and make it as easy as possible for these guys, especially when they have weaknesses like that, for all their players. I know there will be a bunch of you guys. I've had some of you guys say to me, like, oh, you're not going to just change the whole offense for Killian Hayes. It's not just for Killian. You're not changing the whole offense. You should put every single player that's on the court for your team in their best position to succeed. So for the majority of the season when he was just planted in the corner, I do think that was probably not helping him a lot. But literally like 95% of it, if you're talking about just him not being able to score a lot or being inefficient at it, that's Killian. Killian has to get better. He doesn't have great touch around the rim right now. He doesn't know how to be as physical as you want around the rim. Like in the second half he was, and he got free throws out of it. First half, he was scared to go to the rim. So it's like, it's a lot of things he's learning. He just finished the season worth of his career. I really think this third season is where it's going to be make or break. Now he has a full season under his belt. He had a decent sample size this year, not too heavy, but decent size now. And he knows what he needs to work on. He knows where his strengths are at, and he knows where his weaknesses are at. So I think this offseason is going to be big for him, and this third season is where it's really going to be make or break for him with the Pistons. But yeah, definitely a Killian issue. You can't blame Dwayne Casey for Killian not being able to shoot the ball or attack the rim aggressively. Him being spotted up in the corner nonstop earlier in the season, yes, you can do that. But outside of that, this is a Killian issue. This one is from Abdulio Garcia. He says, after watching Corey Joseph and Saban Lee play, have you considered suiting up yourself? What do you bring to the table that they don't? If you rock a high flat top fade, could you pass for 6'8" Cade? That's a funny question. Corey Joseph and Saban Lee, man, they're not great. Corey Joseph definitely has been getting on a lot of fans' nerves. I get that. And Saban Lee, I've told you guys that I don't believe he's an NBA player, but definitely I feel like Saban Lee, even though I believe that, he was kind of set up to fail by fans because he played like decently over expectations last year. And then all of a sudden, like something that fans and a lot of people, just not just Pistons fans, fans across all sports need to stop doing is that when a guy starts to play well, putting these unreasonable expectations. So then when he doesn't live up to those expectations, now you just hate them. So while I believe that Saban is not an NBA player, I don't think he's going to be probably. I do believe he kind of was set up to fail by a lot of fans because they had a lot of expectations for him that he just weren't realistic at all. As for what they bring to the table that I don't, they're about 5 inches taller than me. So actually, are they? Corey Joseph's like 6 foot, right? 6'1". Saban Lee's like 6'1" too. I'm 5'10". So hey, what is my excuse? I don't know. I'm just not as good as them, obviously. Next question is going to be from Chaim Amzalak. I hope I said that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. After the Blazer game, it looks like something's got to be done with the defense. It's giving up inside buckets. Stu is too small and Bagley can't defend. What's your thoughts? So I think the Pistons' biggest issue on defense right now, obviously Bagley is really bad defensively. I tried telling you guys this before. He got when the trade went down before he even played the game. We had Matt George from Locked On Kings on here. He told us that Bagley was not very good defensively. But overall, I think the Pistons' biggest issue defensively right now is that they have this switch across defense where they just switch everywhere. And we talked about this, like, I believe 2 weeks ago on the podcast with Hal. We run him on the podcast. We talked about this. I don't want this to come off as blaming Dwayne Casey, because if the reasoning is that you have a bunch of young guys who just simply aren't going to be able to comprehend how to play like matchup zones or like advanced defensive schemes, and you don't trust them to do that, then that somewhat makes sense with a young team. And I understand that you probably don't believe that they'd be able to do that. However, playing switch all schemes or switching across the board has led to a lot of confusion, a lot of mismatches across the board. Teams attack mismatches like crazy against the Pistons. So that's the main thing with their defense. I think that's their biggest issue, is that they're playing switch all across the board, and teams are just like destroying them with it. And it's basically because I'm going to assume, that's my assumption, is that it's because Dwayne Casey doesn't really trust this team to play anything outside of just switching across. How many minutes are we at? Oh, 30 minutes. God. And there's like 8 more questions. I misjudged this. Okay. Rapid fire. Here we go. I'm trying to get them all done right here. Next one, Hermie. Bey is going to have the Pistons single season 3-point record at season's end. In 20 years, who do you think has that record? Saddiq Bey. All right, next question. Andrew, start one, bench one, cut one. Hami, I don't know why I always say Hami. Hami, Frank, or Livers. I'm starting Livers, benching Frank, and cutting Hami. Next one, Ryan Banks. What order would you put the top 4 draft prospects as of right now? I don't feel confident in doing that right now. I'll come back to you in about probably a week and a half. Then I'll feel more confident in being able to say my top 4 draft prospects. Yeah, I talk with more people, got to do some more studying. Don't feel confident in that, being able to put that big board out yet. Next question from Merch Guy Jeff. When Jerami Grant is out of alignment, why do you think the Pistons miss him so much? There's been some games when they have missed him. There's been some games where they actually have performed better. But in the games that they do miss him, obviously his scoring punch. They don't have many guys on the team that can score. Even though some games he can be incredibly inefficient and some games he just takes bad shots, he's a guy who's capable of simply taking those shots, and sometimes he'll heat up, and they miss that a lot because a lot of the other guys just simply aren't able to do that. Next question. This was another Portland Trailblazers question. Never mind. Let me move on to the next one. Also, that one was asked from Xander. He was about to ask about the Portland Trailblazers. Not going to answer that because we just talked about it in the first segment, but you said Stu is a starting caliber center. PS. I don't know, man. I don't think he is. I think he's a bench center, which is fine. I think he's going to be a high quality backup center. Don't think he's a starting center for the Pistons. If the Pistons ended up with the pick outside the top 5, who would you want? This one's from Kenny. Again, I don't feel confident giving that answer right now. I will be back with you guys in like a week and a half, 2 weeks when I get my big board and start doing more research on it. I'll be back with you guys. Just stay tuned. This one's from Rob Fritz. How much roster turnover do you expect in the offseason? Decent size. I think there's going to be a decent size roster turnover. I think Jeremy's going to be gone. A lot of the role players off the bench will be changed, I think. But I think the core young guys will be the same still. Also, which superhero is the most overrated? Hint, I think it's Batman. No, not Batman. Batman's not the most overrated one. If I had to go the most overrated one, Hawkeye. Hawkeye is just, I don't see how he's like considered like, nah, bro. You can't sit here and try to tell me. Now, I also want to go Black Widow. I'm not going to lie. Because when you, and now I don't read the comics. I'm going basically just built off the MCU. There's no way in hell that you're telling me during Infinity War and Endgame, I'm watching Vision get his ass whooped. And Vision, who is supposed to be just like this godly figure, just this dominant dude that I watch go out there and dominate all the time, he gets his ass whooped. But 2 humans with no superpower, just a gun and a bow and arrow, are able to take on Thanos' army, survive, and hold their own and take out the majority of them. But I'm supposed to believe Vision gets his ass whooped and can't survive. No, those 2 right there. You actually just got me heated. I could talk for hours about that. Anyways, last question. Joshua, he says, who would you rather invest in long-term, Livers, Frank, or Hami? Going with Isaiah Livers. I think Isaiah Livers' IQ, along with his ability to hit outside shots, his size as well. I really like that. Hami, I have legitimate questions about Hami. And Frank, even though he's a nice scorer, he's undersized. Doesn't bring much else to the team, and he's not I don't think he's a high IQ type of player. I really like Livers, so I'd invest in Livers long-term. Got through all of you guys' questions in just under 34 minutes. Okay, not too long. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode, guys. Thank you for making Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. I want to thank you guys one more time for making Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. Make sure you guys make Locked On NBA your second listen of every single day. Locked On Experts, covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. On the road to 2,000 subscribers. Enjoy the game tonight. I'll see you guys on the next podcast. Be sure, if you didn't get your question answered somehow, I missed it somewhere, or you want to be on the Mailbag podcast next week, again, we will be on next week with the Mailbag podcast. So just go ahead, comment down below, #Mailbag on YouTube, or you can tweet me at KukaHill, #Mailbag, and I'll be sure to bookmark it and try and answer it for next week's episode. But until the next podcast, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe, everybody, and go Pistons.